Last week, at a youth group I help lead, one of my girls looked at me and said, "And then, my teacher told me that if I kiss a boy for more than 3 seconds, I'm going to get pregnant." All of the people around us laughed. We all knew that this was incredibly false. But I'm sure some of you guys have had similar experiences as this. When you're with a group of friends and someone says something that they've learned or that they heard, and everyone else just laughs because they know that this fact is utterly false. We may laugh, but indeed, we should be alarmed that this high school girl has just been taught this false piece of information from a teacher, and to be more specific, a sex education teacher. When I reflect upon my time in sex education, I'm left feeling rather negative. I was told things that were meant to scare me out of having sex with anybody, and I was told to pledge my abstinence on a 3x5 note card that would probably be later thrown away. All of these things, among other things. And I can also reflect back on the sex education that I have and what wasn't discussed during this time. Like that it's actually common to have more than one sexual partner, and that sex can actually be pleasurable. I'm sure the parents in the audience are listening to me and just cringing. If we tell our kids about sex, won't they spiral out of control and have sex with everything in sight? The answer is no. As I look into the future, I wonder about if my daughter will have the same sex education as me, this heteronormative, slut-shaming, virginity-pledging education. And where is all the talk of consent in this? What about the risks of sex? What about the pleasures of sex? If most people end up having sex in their lifetime, isn't it seemingly implied that we need to be telling future generations the truth about having a healthy sex life? By teaching our kids that sex isn't a topic that telling the truth is worth sharing about, then we risk our kids engaging in unhealthy sex lives for the rest of their lives. Those of us who went to public school probably remember having some form of sex education, whether that be in the form of videos or a teacher up in front of the classroom telling you facts, or possibly a nurse that was brought in from the hospital that's nearby. Maybe you had to read books or look up things online, but for most of us this was part of the curriculum that we were raised to be taught in. Sex education is a time of awkward giggles and rosy cheeks as classrooms and classmates are thrown together to learn about things that they're going to have to deal with for the rest of their lives. Their bodies, their sexuality, and their sex lives. Sex education is typically started in 5th to 6th grade and is continued through high school. At the 5th to 6th grade time, playground talk starts developing among kids, meaning that rumors will spread on the playground about, oh, what happens if Johnny kisses Kelly, or endless other things. Sex education is started at this time because at this age, kids' bodies are changing. They may be starting to smell after they run around for a little bit, and cooties from the other genders may not seem to be like such a big deal anymore. Sex ed is supposed to help young people gain a positive view of sexuality and to give kids developmentally appropriate knowledge and skills so that they can make healthy decisions in the future. Sex ed is supposed to create a generation of women and men comfortable in their own skin and allow adolescents to make well-informed, responsible decisions with what they're doing. This is also to form a healthy relationship with their own bodies and to take care of their bodies, because as kids age, their sex education begins including topics such as sex, HIV, and sexuality. Well, it should be anyway. The truth is that sex education is structured so very poorly that the goals of sex education may seem so great and make so much sense when they're written down on paper, but executing the goals is a completely different story. Of course, we would like the youth to be educated about their bodies, diseases, sex, and their sexualities so they can make informed and healthy decisions. But instead of taking the time to explain useful information to these students, a surprising amount of sex educators take this time, this valuable time with their students, just to plant destructive seeds in their little growing brain. With this, a few specific tactics are used. The first is to show classrooms vulgar images of STDs gone crazy, gone just out of control. And because nothing says don't have sex like an image of completely mutilated genitalia infested with disease right in front of your face. The second example is making sex to be a dirty, horrible thing. This example is used in schools across the country and mainly stems from a school in New York. It's called the tape metaphor. And what the tape metaphor is a teacher will go around with a piece of tape and they'll stick it on the arms of the students. They will then rip it up, move to another student, and put the tape on their arm as well. And then, as the teacher goes around sticking it on the arms of the students in the class, because tape is only a temporarily cohesive agent, the tape gets dirtier and loses stickiness within a few arm transfers, making the tape essentially useless and dirty. The sticking of the tape is symbolizing having sex with an individual, and the lesson taught to these students is that the more people you get stuck on or have sex with, the dirtier and less valuable that you become. The third example is given from a woman who went to Catholic high school in the early 1970s. She recalls that the school brought in a supposed doctor to talk with the junior and senior girls about sex. He told them that there was no such thing as rape because the woman's inner thigh muscles in a body were so strong that she could resist if she really wanted to. Her and her friend went home later that day and laid down on the ground and asked one of their guy friends to try and pull apart their legs, which you already know he could do with absolutely no problem at all. This theory was blown out of the water that the doctor had told them, but the message of shame and misogyny was still delivered and also absorbed by these students. Suddenly, the ideas of kids walking away feeling empowered about their health and their sexuality vanishes. Like I said, everything seems like butterflies and roses when we look at it on paper, but it's rarely executed. Where the testes are located and what a uterus actually is talked about, but sex is looked at in such a harsh, negative light that the realities of sex are never revealed to students. The dangers, the pleasures, the consequences, and the importance of consent. Aside from the examples of some terrible things that can be found happening in sex educations across the country, I'm going to share with you some shocking state regulations on sex education. So, of our 50 states, only 24 require that sex education is mandated. And of those 24 states, only 13 require that information given to our students is medically accurate. And of those 24 states, 19 stress the importance of only having sex when you are married. Of those 24 states, 4 require that that information given about sexuality is only to be homonegative. So, from this we can see that less than half of our kids growing up are required some form of sex education. And of those states that sex education is required, nearly a quarter of the states in our country require medically accurate information about sex and the kids' bodies to be delivered directly to them. This inadequacy of information being relayed to our students can be shown possibly through the recent statistics of STDs. Young people ages 15 to 24 make up of nearly a quarter of sexually active people, and for over a half of the new cases of STDs every single year. This is a pretty shocking statistic, but considering that less than a quarter of our states require information on condoms be told to students, it's no surprise. Students begin having sex before they are told how to go about making big decisions like this in a healthy manner. By the age of 18, over 60% of humans have had sexual intercourse before. And before this age, kids are told in sex education that abstinence is one of the only options that they can partake in. Of the 24 states that mandate sex education, abstinence is a topic that is to be stressed, when in fact abstinence is not the only option, and we have found that in general, it's not the option that our kids are taking. Now, to the parents in the audience, I'm sure that you're still cringing with every single word that I'm saying, that teaching kids about sex is only going to result in them having sex out of control. Once they know that sex is a natural act, that they're just going to start multiplying like rabbits. This is false. Kids who have been well informed about sex through the school system and at home by their parents are more likely to delay having sex, using condoms, and will also have fewer partners in their lifetime. Kids who are told the truths about sex are more likely to ask questions that will lead to a healthy sex life in the future. When kids are going through sex education at ages 10 to 14, They are most receptive to the messages that are being told and that will go to shape their beliefs in the future around sex. If programs are implemented and followed when adolescents are susceptible to this information, a healthy sex life in the future is almost inevitable. The beginning of a healthy sex life begins with education. If we are sending only negative messages to our young students, it is no wonder that slut-shaming is a problem, or victim blaming. Our country struggles with these problems. Not to mention that certain STDs have increased by over 15% in just the past few years. It's because at a young age, our students are taught that sex is dirty and it's vulgar. Instead of facing potentially awkward and truthful conversations with students, it has become a habit to mask the truths about sex and having a healthy sex life. And as a result, we are left with uneducated humans out in the world participating in unhealthy sex lives. This becomes not only a danger to themselves, but their communities as well. Bad sex education is not what our kids need. They need to know the risks of sex. They need to know the pleasures of sex. They need to know the importance of consent. They need to know the importance of protection. They need to know that they are loved no matter what sexuality they are. They need to be able to feel comfortable in their own skin, and they need to feel comfortable to ask any questions. They need better sex education. Thank you. Clap, 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 clap.